Well, thanks for joining us, Riffing on Main Street. We had such a wonderful conversation with Jim Johnston, scholar, artist, writer, historian, man about town. Yeah, so what keeps you around?
What keeps me around? Well, let's see. I live in the same house I've lived in almost 80 years.
Is that right?
Yeah, I got
so
my...
you live in the house you were born in?
Well, not literally born in, but
right.
living there since shortly after birth.
Since shortly after birth.
Since shortly after birth,
Right,
yes.
right. So you were in the old house.
In the old house.
Uh-huh. Tell me about the house.
The house was originally built by Oliver Pond in 1760.
Okay.
And it was
Did you know him?
Did I? Yes, we did. We were chums. I'm a little older than I look. This is true. You know, I know. I don't look a day over 97. But,
Yeah.
the years have not been kind. But
But he built it, right?
no, he built it. It's built out of chestnut, and it's interesting that it's boarded in with boards, which are this thick. In other words, what it's boarded in with is much heavier and sturdier than what is used for framing generally.
Right.
And balloon construction.
Okay.
Because this is not balloon construction.
Yeah. Tell people what that is. Tell me what
balloon
that is.
construction was pretty common in the Civil and post-Civil War era, especially in the Northeast and the Northwest, where they were building a lot of cheap buildings. And the interior walls provided support.
Yep.
And whereas with these earlier houses, like mine, you could take out all the interior walls and it would still stand.
Okay.
So that's kind of an interesting
So
thing.
Pond built the house for you.
Yes, he
to
did. It
eventually
was
live
very,
in,
yeah, it was very
right?
good of him to do that. I appreciated that.
And you've lived there all this time.
I've lived there since 1944.
Really,
And my grandmother and grandfather moved in there in 1920.
Did they, huh?
They did.
And so, how do you maintain a house like that? How do you maintain that house?
It's a lot of work and somewhat carefully. Although the house is
Small.
It's not small. It's 3,200 square feet now.
Oh, okay.
But it was original. The original footprint was probably. Let me do some mathematics here.
Go for it.
Sure. 23
Historian mathematics.
23 by 25 feet
Okay.
was its original footprint.
Wow.
And then the main footprint grew to be 40 by 25, and then all these L's were sprouted. And,
Sure.
well, you really should come down and check it out because it's entirely furnished in period.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. There's nothing in my house that shouldn't have been there in the time period of the particular room.
Really?
My rooms aren't rooms, they're galleries.
Wow.
Yeah, they're galleries.
So
We could sit in the Federal Gallery, which is the living room.
way.
And we can sit in the Colonial Gallery, which is the dining room.
And do you collect all these, or did you
yes.
did you make them yourselves? Did you keep...
No, I don't. I'm pretty old, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Not things from my 18th century childhood or anything like that.
Yeah.
But these are things I've collected since I was 4 or 5.
Wow.
I mean, doesn't every 4 or 5-year-old kid go out and collect, early 18th century banister chairs? I mean, I'm sure they do.
If you're told to do so, I'm sure.
Well,
huh?
I would go out, and I was charming as a child.
Were you?
I was extremely
Would you lose it
precocious.
along the way?
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. Its charm is lying all over Franklin because of where I dropped it. But anyway, I could beguile elderly ladies out of anything using my 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9-year-old charm. Yes, they just bent over backwards to give me things from the attic.
That is a quite lovely table I see that you
Oh,
have. Huh?
that's so nice. You don't like that anymore?
Wow.
I think I could put that somewhere where it would be very... I bet my mother would like that, yes.
And you keep a history of all these pieces? Do you know?
It's all up
Can
here.
you run the chain on the pieces?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all up here. A lot of it is written down, but
Yeah.
a lot of it is not. I've written 6 books, let's see, 6 books and 2,500 articles and monographs over the years. But
Are you still writing?
Oh, I'm still writing, sure. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
use a quill, right?
Oh, yes, yes,
That's
yes, a
it.
quill. Quill and a computer, yeah, they work well together.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, if I find myself slowing down, I take the quill, stab myself in the neck 5 or 6
stab
times.
it. So when did you decide, well, I think you may have answered this, when did you decide you're going to be a historian, scholar, writer, author, all that sort of stuff?
I was about 8 months old, and I thought it would be a good gig.
Yes, all right. Yeah, I
Now,
thought you were going to say in the womb.
I had a wonderful childhood. It really was wonderful. World War II came along,
Yeah.
and I was the first male born into the family in like 17 years.
Really?
And I was the only male and a male baby in a house filled with adoring women.
Mm-hmm.
Just filled with adoring women. I was carried everywhere. I was spoiled rotten. I was speaking in English declarative sentences by the time I was 12 months old. But I did not walk, I did not run. In fact, I didn't even crawl. I rolled. Because I could say, Gertrude, take me over there. Charlotte, take me over there. Grandma, take me over there.
And it would
Mommy,
happen.
and it would happen. You know, it was wonderful. I had this wonderful harem. And
you were too young to be drafted.
And I was much too young to be drafted, although in the end it may have been a good idea. You never can tell. You know, they could have sent me to Hitler, and he would have thought I would have made a nice pet, and when his back was turned, and it would have been all over.
So, so what do you make of this? Have you seen Oppenheimer?
I have not seen Oppenheimer. I am familiar, of course, with Oppenheimer. And
so what do you make of I think the popularity of it all, the notion that people are going out to see this.
People are very interested in history. And what I find is that people discover history after they get out of school, in many instances.
Why do you think that's the case?
Because they're looking for a connection to their society. They're looking for a connection to their past. They're looking for ideas to associate with at different levels.
Yeah.
Some of it may be more visceral, some of it may be more intellectual.
Sure.
But I think that people like to connect. People like to connect.
And why do you think why do you think we don't do that in school while we're in school?
Because you
get
have
these young minds.
Well, you know, I was a brilliant teacher, and naturally I inspired all of my students to be brilliant as well. And,
from Franklin High.
Oh, absolutely.
And Dean College.
And I taught adult courses there, a couple of adult courses.
Yeah, still, we're all adults at Dean College.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh, things have changed at Dean College. But anyway.
We're all adults.
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope not.
Okay.
What a terrible fate if we were all adults. Hell, I mean, I wouldn't want to be.
I see that point. That's a good point.
You know, I mean, you should be committed to a certain degree of adulthood.
Yes, yes.
Where you are responsible. We must be responsible.
Sure, we must.
We must pay our bills.
Right.
We must be on time sometimes.
Well, but why not the curiosity?
But the curiosity
and everything else that goes with history. Why don't we exercise it?
If you're going to be
in college, in high school.
Well, let's go back. What I used to do was encourage a lot of discussion. In fact, what I used to do was set up my classroom into 2 concentric circles. And I would sit there in the circle with the young people, and then we had one big circle.
See each other.
And so everybody, there was no front row, there was no back row.
Right.
Everybody could look at each other.
Yeah.
And we could discuss what was brought up in the course of the lesson based on the homework assignment. The homework assignment was a good jumping off place. You see, the class was always, the material was a good jumping off place to somewhere else.
Right.
And you just let it happen. And it worked out pretty well. And we got into some pretty interesting discussions. And there are subtle ways to involve people who don't want to be involved. And that is you seduce them into the subject.
Yeah, tell me about that.
You can, there'll be a glimmer of recognition or something going on. You'll pick up on that, you feed into that, and you can draw it out.
Yeah.
So to be a good teacher, you should also be a very good psychologist. And I really enjoyed teaching. I taught for 34 years, and I would have done it for nothing if I could have afforded to.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was a great thing to do.
What'd you love about it?
I loved the interaction with the kids. I loved opening them up to the world of ideas. I loved opening them up to critical thinking. Don't accept.
Well, you know, we're in a world right now where there's a strange lack of that.
Oh, yes, yes, it's very peculiar. If you take a look at Florida, for example, where AP psychology will no longer be taught. Why? Is sex dirty? I mean, is there a reason? Is Freud a nasty old man?
Well, apparently so.
Apparently, yeah. Poor Alfred Adler. I mean, there are a lot of very nice people that won't be. But the thing is that these children can get college credit for taking these courses.
Yeah.
So DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is robbing these people of economic opportunities as well as intellectual opportunities.
So what's to be done?
Defeat him at the polls.
Well, that. But you know, as a society, it's great talking to someone like you who's a historian. People will say, I've never seen it so bad, so terrible. You know something? I think we're on the verge of a war.
We are on the verge of a cultural war and a political war, and the enemy is fascism.
Well, talk to us about that. Most people have no clue what fascism is. Tell us about that.
Something, when you have the desire of a group of people to take over a society, to discipline it, and make it conform to their standard of what they think should be done. That is fascism. When you deny people...
Everybody wants to do that.
I don't think so.
Everybody wants to make everyone live their life the way I live my life.
Well, you know something?
We want to control the future. We want to get rid of the past. Isn't that a human instinct?
The thing of control.
Yeah.
Control. I mean, there are some people who are not comfortable if they're not in control, and they are called control freaks.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that is an element of this. But if you take a whole group of people who, for economic reasons, radical racism, from the point of view of all sorts of isms, it's a bad thing when they want to control society to make it conform to their particular prejudice.
Sure.
It is. First of all...
And there are a lot of people out there who buy into that.
First of all, my cousin, we all come from the same place, and that is Africa. We all come from
You're not teaching in Florida anytime soon.
Everybody on this planet has their origins in this place.
Correct.
We came out of there and we dispersed over this enormous planet over a period of anywhere from 1.8 to 2.7 million years. And here we are. We're all members of the same family of Homo sapiens.
And we still fight each other.
And, well, my cousin.
Well, what you just said, you've been saying a lot of things that are, in many people's worlds, controversial.
Oh, yes, yes.
Right?
But
Facts, but controversial.
But you know what it is? People are so worried about how they are perceived. We are obsessed by the way we're perceived.
Yeah.
Well, not me, of course. I don't care. But I mean, but everybody to a certain degree. And how they are seen is very important. Now, we went through a whole era in our 20th century history when men were into their machismo. And then there were other people trying to find themselves and their identity. And I'm sympathetic to that. I'm extremely sympathetic to that. But people clash over that because they feel threatened.
Yeah.
And why do people respond the way they do to each other from the point of view of racism, economic disparity, whatever?
Right.
They're afraid of the other. They're afraid of those people who are not like them.
Yes, right.
And that is the great evil that pervades society. And that is what absolutists who support fascism like, because fascism becomes their tool. Take a person who becomes president of the United States, says that he can do unspeakable things to women
Yes.
because he's famous,
Right.
and engage in conduct with no gentleman should engage in, or a decent person.
Mm-hmm.
And we like to think that gentlemen are decent people. One would hope so.
I would hope so.
And gentle ladies are decent people.
Yes.
But there are people who like that sort of feeling of validation of that behavior. So people who are
It gets you elected.
and people who are inclined to dislike their neighbor for all the wrong reasons are validated by the fact that somebody like that
Yeah.
can become president of the United States. Does he have a program? No. Where was the program in 2020 of the Conservative Party in this country? Where was it? There was no platform.
Mm-hmm.
The platform did not exist for the first time since ever.
Mm-hmm.
It was just amazing.
Yeah.
So if you study history,
Mm-hmm.
you had better look at all the footnotes, and you had
You
better
should.
look at the motivation of people who did very bad things.
Yeah.
And certain behaviors are frequently repeated. And right now, there's a lot of danger out there.
Yeah.
And people are afraid of knowing things or having
Is it-
their children taught
How
things.
fascinating is that, huh? Knowing
It's
things.
terrifying.
I never thought I'd see book burning again.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the Nazis did.
We are terrified of our children knowing things. Wow.
Burning books.
We're burning books.
I remember there
We're
was...
jailing librarians. We
Now-
are.
Now, when you were a very young man, which
Yes.
wasn't that long ago, obviously,
Well, thank you very much. But,
I'm sure you saw.
Yes, it was.
You saw a program called The Waltons,
Oh, I remember the Waltons. Yes.
and there were episodes that took place in the 30s
Mm-hmm.
in the United States, and one of these episodes, these people who were anti-Hitler decided that they would have a book burning. And they threw Mein Kampf into the fire, and they're
Right.
throwing. And John Boy Walton, the hero of the piece, said, wait a minute. Shouldn't burn books, even books that you don't agree with, because
Oh.
if you don't read them, how are you going to know they're bad? Or how are you going to be able to judge them?
That is true, John Boy.
And then all these books that were in German, anything in German titles, were being thrown in there. He said, wait a minute, what's this book? It's a book of stories by Thomas Mann. He said, this is not fascism, this is not evil. He said, there is good literature written in German.
There
You
is.
know, you can't oversimplify these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Simplistic thinking and fascism also go together.
Yep. And again, there is a lot of it out there. right
Easy answers to profound questions.
Sure.
No, that's bad.
now. Well, tell me about your stamp collection.
My stamp collection is purty.
Purdy.
Very purty.
Purty. How
and you're
big is it?
welcome to. It's a couple of hundred volumes, and
Wow.
it's very large and heavy, and
You've been collecting since you were 5 as well?
I've been collecting since I was about 5. Yeah, my uncle started me. My uncle Richmond Worcester Foss started me on that
Oh, wow.
collection.
That's a name.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get passed on?
No.
Oh, wow.
No, it didn't. I started my own. Well, he gave me a few odds and ends, and
Yeah.
you know, I mean, what do you give a 5-year-old? You
Yeah.
don't give them a set of Zeppelins. Probably not a good idea.
And there you
But
go.
but anyway, I like the beauty of stamps. I love the engraving, and those early stamps were engraved.
Yeah.
And I'd take a magnifying glass and I'd study the engraving,
You
and
would, huh?
I'd want to know what they commemorated.
Yeah.
Now, who was this person?
Mhm.
And I'd ask my grandmother, and she would tell me, because she had a pretty good knowledge of who these different people were.
Yeah.
So I found out who they were, and then where did they come from?
Mm-hmm.
Then I started learning bits and pieces of different languages. And
Yeah.
then I wanted to collect them in covers, that is, on the original envelope. And then I wanted to collect them with their original contents.
Ah,
That's even better.
got it.
That's even better.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I collected the world somewhat successfully, and then I sold that off and concentrated on the United States. Not for any particular jingoistic reason. I just happen to like, again, the stamps from the point of view of the aesthetic.
Yeah. They are wonderful.
Yeah, they are.
Do you still do that with modern stamps or
no,
current stamps?
my cutoff date is around 1940. I make exceptions.
Got it.
Like for the hunting permit stamps, which are very beautiful and serve a good conservation purpose.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm in favor of good causes.
They are, yes, it's good. So I often ask people as we close to recommend something to read, to watch, to see, to listen to. What do you give me as a couple of recommendations?
I would like everybody to go to the library.
Yeah. Franklin Public Library.
Franklin Public Library, or
we got to talk about that in a moment.
Whatever library they got, and ask for books by Lerone Bennett.
Ah, Lerone Bennett.
Now, Lerone Bennett.
Oh, yes.
Passed away
before the Mayflower, right?
Before the Mayflower, exactly.
And plenty of other things.
And many other things, yes. But that is his seminal work.
Yeah, before the Mayflower.
He was born in 1928. He died in 1918, just short of his 90th birthday.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was a wonderful writer. He's a pleasure to read.
He is.
But I would love everybody to read Before the Mayflower because I would like them to understand exactly where we all stand historically in this country.
Wow.
I want to know.
Powerful.
Yes, yes. I think it's important that we know these things.
Yeah. So what makes you recommend that right now, today?
Right now, today, with everything that's going on, especially with a lot of this ugly, latent racism that doesn't really come out of the dark corner all the way, but it's sneaking out there.
Right.
Black history, particularly, is being crushed. And if black history is being crushed, it means that everybody's history is being crushed.
Correct.
It does not exist in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And what happened in this country happened in this country and elsewhere.
Yeah.
And you don't erase it by ignoring it. And we've got to know where we have come from. We have got to know where we've been.
Yeah.
And we better have a pretty good grip on where we're going because right now, we are at a very dangerous crossroads in this country's history and this world's history.
How do you think it ends?
I look at Erdogan.
Okay.
I look at Duarte. I look at Putin. I look at a gentleman who wants to reclaim his place in the White House, whose name I shall not mention.
Look
and
it up.
I am a little bit afraid. Now, I'm in my 80th year.
Yeah.
Ain't going to be around forever.
Congrats.
And maybe I'll only live another 80 or 90 years, not many. But the thing is, I'm very conscious of what these young people are going to be facing, after I'm long gone. And I would like them to continue to enjoy the positive side of the American experience.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do that in the hands of a cult leader who has no program except to preserve himself and his control over this country. And that is fascism. When the government exists merely to exact and hold control and sway over a people with no positive agenda.
Yeah.
No positive agenda.
Yeah.
That is fascism. When people try to curb the vote, keep people from voting, keep them from being represented, twisting the ends of elections, perverting the course of the will of the people in the Electoral College by rioting and interrupting that vote. Mike Pence is not somebody I ever would have considered a hero, but there are aspects of that man's personality which are absolutely heroic. He rose to the occasion on the 6th of January, 2000, oh boy,
How fast we forget.
No, how fast? I said I'm in my 80th year, and that's my excuse.
2021, right?
2021.
Right.
And he rose to the occasion, and he said, no, I'm not subverting this election. We're going to we're going to hold a vote, and the Electoral College voted, and the present incumbent, Joseph Biden, was legally elected president of the United States.
Right.
And has done a great job of work in that office. But all I can say is that I hope when we come to a year from November where we are casting our ballots, that we will think very, very carefully about where we are going. And I hope that our love for democracy is more than paying some sort of token appreciation to our historical past. It should be real.
Yeah.
You know, democracy is a great thing as long as we can keep it.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, as Dr. Franklin said, you have a republic as long as you can keep it.
Yes, Dr. Franklin. Well, let's talk about Dr. Franklin for a minute. Let's keep going here. So I'm learning, as you have, and you've probably participated in the conversation about the naming of Franklin.
Yes, but I didn't talk about it to Dr. Franklin himself.
You didn't?
He was still in England.
He was still there. We thought he was assassinated. He had been assassinated.
Oh, yeah, there was a rumor, yeah. But
Yeah. And my understanding is the good people of then West Wrentham, instead of calling this place Essex, decided we got to honor Benjamin Franklin.
Well, we had an ulterior motive.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Everybody knows about a lot of people know about the ulterior motive. We thought, well, Dr. Franklin's rich.
Yes.
In fact, he was the richest man
He was.
in the country.
Right.
He was a very enterprising businessman. He invested in real estate. He invested in printing. He invested in property. He was a very smart fellow.
Yeah. Started tabloids, too, I understand.
Oh, yes.
Early
The
tabloids.
Pennsylvania Gazette, yeah. But getting back to what we were talking about, Franklin had a lot of money. And Dr. Emmons, our congregational pastor and leader of the community, said, you know, if we name the town after, Ben Franklin, and he talked to the other leaders in town, he said, like Jabez Fisher, who was representative in the Great and General Court and chairman of the Board of Selectmen, said, we can get money out of him for a bell for our new meeting house. A bronze bell. We can get that fellow Revere up in Boston to cast us a nice bell.
Right.
We'll name it for Dr. Franklin. Now, this was in 1778. The Revolution was going on. Franklin was in England, and France, rather, representing our interests at the court of Louis XVI, playing chess with the Comte de Vergennes and going to parties at midnight, and doing the real work of diplomacy, whereas John Adams would go to bed early, get up early in the morning, and think he was doing the diplomacy.
Sure.
Well, Franklin was really doing the job. And by the way, Adams is a relative of mine.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he's one of my aunts. Well, he's a cousin.
Got it.
He's a cousin.
Cousin.
That makes him your cousin.
That makes me a cousin.
There you go.
That's it.
So anyway, I just got lost in the miasma of my own verbiage. Wait a minute, let me come back. Yes, here we are.
You were talking about Franklin doing the diplomacy in France.
So anyway, Franklin gets the news that the town's going to be named for him.
Right.
He also is told that he'll be expected maybe at some point to give us a bell. He says, he said, this little town doesn't need a bell anymore than a toad needs a tail, for they'll have to have a bell ringer, and that's a living expense. They'd be better off to have some books. So he gave 20 pounds, and 20 pounds was a lot of money.
Okay.
Thousands and thousands of dollars. 20 pounds would be like $25 gold pieces with an intrinsic value of about $500 to $600 a piece. So it's
not bad.
quite a little bit of money.
Yeah, nice bit of change.
So he bought all these books, many of them secondhand. And, secondhand books are very expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, books were...
They're books, right.
Books, all handset type.
Books, yeah.
So anyway, these were shipped to Franklin, and they were received... When do you think they were received? They made the deal in 1778. They named the town, so...
I bet it took a couple years before they were received.
How about 1786?
Really?
Took till... Somewhere in my library, I have an original printed sermon on these books by Emmons for 1786. I had it bound in leather, as a matter of fact. And it's in my library. I should have brought it along today.
Oh, that'd been fun.
Well, I can always come back.
Yeah.
So anyway, we accepted the books, and Dr. Emmons was appointed as the leading intellectual in the place.
Yes.
As a librarian. And of course, he only let them out to members of his congregation. And complaints were made to the Board of Selectmen. So he numbered those books from 1 to 116.
Okay.
And those could be loaned to the town, and anything over that would be loaned only to members of the Congregational Society. So anyway.
Wow.
Do you have any questions?
Dear Franklin. And how about that wonderful library?
The library itself was a gift of the Ray sisters in honor of their parents, Joseph Gordon Ray and Lydia Rockwood Ray. And that was, of course, donated and built in the early part of the 20th century in a sort of Roman revival style. And the building itself is a masterpiece. It's absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
It was decorated and has features wonderful paintings by Antonio Junglaris, who painted those marvelous murals with all of those lovely ladies with that diaphanous covering, which came later. They got that later. The artist was told to come back and drape his women.
Drape.
They were undraped before.
That is a great term for it.
Yes.
Drape.
They were draped. And it was a very popular place for young men to go and study.
Oh, I see.
Anatomy, I think.
Wow.
And the fine arts, of course.
Well, it's wonderful to see the kind of flow that goes in there now.
But there are other paintings in that building which are well worth looking at. It's a marvelous place.
Well, leave us with some words, Jim.
Don't confuse knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is stuff you have in your head, and the wisdom is the ability to put it together in a cogent manner which may lead you to something like truth. How about that? I just came up with that.
Yeah, we could use a little bit. It's on tape, and people will be able to see it, write it down in X or...
Write it down.
Do what they got to do to get
Write
it
it
out
down,
there.
and I'll autograph it for you.
All right. I might catch up with you.
Might be worth 25, 35 cents.
At least now. Jim Johnston, it has been wonderful. Thanks, Jim.
My pleasure. My very, very great pleasure, Ken.
Thank you.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors, good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.